Something happened at the Disney Studios around the year 2000. I'm going to call it a happy pocket of creativity. The Disney Renaissance had launched with The Little Mermaid back in 1989. They nabbed a Best Picture nomination in 1991, and the Renaissance can arguably have said to have continued through Tarzan in 1999. These movies vary in their strengths, but the company seemed to have really found a rhythm that resounded with the public. But this success, in my humble opinion, got Disney's traditional animation into a rut. The formula was pretty set, and it continued through other films until Princess and the Frog put a nail in that coffin. Lilo and Stitch, for example. It's gorgeous with its watercolor backgrounds, and it has a quirky addiction to Elvis Presley, but it fits into a pretty standard Disney formula. Spunky heroine, cute sidekick, Broadway musical format, whether diegetic or not, and big action finale. I'm not saying these are bad movies, though they do vary in their quality. I'm just saying that by the time they got to Brother Bear, Home on the Range, and Princess and the Frog, for me they'd become movies that I would watch only once. But in 1999, 2000, and 2001, Disney did some really weird things with a trio of movies that defied studio logic. These were not huge hits, but they brought back some of the crazy energy from the early days, bizarre storylines just like Pinocchio and Dumbo or Alice in Wonderland. The Emperor's New Groove, Fantasia 2000, and Atlantis. Each ended up being something special and unique. The Emperor's New Groove had begun as Empire of the Sun, a fairly serious film about ancient Peru. I've always wanted Disney to try just doing a serious animated movie aimed at adult audiences. I understand why they don't, but glimpses of what that could be come in Nutcracker Suite, Rite of Spring, and Night on Bald Mountain and Fantasia, and those are tantalizing. Just give me one solid Disney film with no cute animals in it. But that was not going to happen here. What we got instead was a fantastic, in a completely different direction, movie. Somewhere along the way, they cast John Goodman, Eartha Kitt, David Spade, and Patrick Warburton, and Tom Jones. Does it sound like I'm just randomly naming people? And that turned into the most Looney Tunes madness Disney has ever made. Put your hands in the air! A story about an emperor who turns into a llama and then needs to fight an evil sorceress. Just check this scene out. Eartha Kitt is trying to eavesdrop on Patrick Warburton and a squirrel.
Could you give us a little room here?
Oh, sorry.
It shouldn't get much weirder than this, but then it does.
Hey, I've been turned into a cow. Can I go home?
You're excused. Anyone else?
Somehow it all works. Kronk is maybe the funniest Disney character of all time.
Oh, he's doing his own theme music?
And Spade and Goodman make a pretty good duo. This is perhaps the only thing I've really enjoyed David Spade in. Goodman, though, he's always great. Director Mike Dindal, an effects guy whose credits include some great but undersung movies like The Rocketeer or The Great Mouse Detective, sadly only went on to do the much maligned Chicken Little and Cats Don't Dance. Oh, and some early work on Garfield.
So do you have any regrets?
Garfield, maybe?
Still, Emperor's New Groove makes me laugh like no Disney movie ever has. I would still say it's the most underrated Disney animated film. And then came Fantasia 2000. That's one of the ballsiest titles in Disney history. I mean, nobody cares about Patch's London Adventure or Return to Neverland, and Fantasia is the big artsy piece that Walt himself created. Serious classical compositions accompanied mostly by serious animation. Nobody wants to mess with that. Except that Walt himself planned to mess with that. The idea was to swap out pieces and have Fantasia as a living thing. You know, like Disneyland.
As long as there is imagination left in the world, Disneyland will never be complete.
Fantasia was produced in the era of roadshow pictures, where you would go to a special theater, they would give you a program, it was a real night out. They planned to intercut new segments to freshen it up, kind of like a repertoire company, but animated. That vision never really materialized for a lot of reasons. Fantasia 2000 was born into a vastly different world. Multiplexes had taken over. I saw Fantasia 2000 in a tiny cinema in Seoul, where my wife and I actually sat on the floor directly next to the screen so it would look better than seeing this on TV. And the movie definitely deserves better than the TV treatment. Its scope is grand, and some segments like the flying whales in Pines of Rome and the terror and joy of the Firebird really need to be huge. It's nowhere near as ambitious as the original Fantasia. The opening segments display the disparity. The original Fantasia opens with a long, abstract representation of how an audience member gets taken away by classical performances. Fantasia 2000 hedges its bets. It opens with a piece that looks abstract, but really gives you a storyline and characters to root for. It mimics the original, but it's really not the same thing. Similarly, the stiff intros by Deems Taylor in the original are replaced by a string of celebrity cameos, most of which fall flat. What Fantasia 2000 does offer, though, is something really different from the original. It tugs at your heartstrings. If you told me a Donald Duck cartoon would make me cry on every single viewing, or that an anime-inspired wood sprite could get me choked up, or that the fates of a rich orphan and bored drummer could make me fist pump even after 22 years of rewatching and rewatching the same movie, there is a funny undercurrent about environmentalism. Butterflies escaping some abstract, black, gooey threat, whales leaving the earth, Noah saving the animals, the cycle of volcanoes and fertilization. I'm sure that's probably a coincidence, but the movie seems to have two themes: the survival of our planet and the beauty of human connection. I'm down with both of those. Fantasia, I guess I'm saying, is a glorious piece of art, but Fantasia 2000 is glorious in how it touches our humanity. And the final movie of this era, Atlantis. This and Treasure Planet seem to be Gen Z movies, and despite similarities, a scrappy hero who gets into an adventure with a cast of characters and they end up in a supernatural action piece at the end, I feel pretty differently about these two films. As I've said in a previous video, the CGI in Treasure Planet feels a little jarring to me. Atlantis, on the other hand, does majestic things with its submarine and with the Leviathan robot that destroys it. For most of the film, the blending of traditional and computer animation is seamless, something I can't say for the creepy baby whale in Fantasia 2000. And this is because the design in Atlantis is very consistent. Based loosely on the work of Mike Mignola, the creator of the classy and stylish comic book Hellboy, promos for this film boasted of the way that everything, down to the characters' fingernails, fit a specific aesthetic, and they weren't wrong. The story is admittedly, Jules Verne meets Indiana Jones. It goes off the rails with weird magic at the end and a standard save-the-day chase and fight. But what makes this movie special, besides the art design, is the cast of characters. It's really an ensemble piece in a way that no animated film besides maybe Toy Story has ever really succeeded in. Once again, I'm forced to compare this movie with Treasure Planet. My apologies to Musker and Clemens, who've done excellent work in many films and desperately wanted Treasure Planet to be their chef d'oeuvre. But Atlantis does more with less. Treasure Planet had Emma Thompson, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Patrick McGoohan, Roscoe T. Brown, and Brian Murray, a solid cast. And in the end, there isn't a single performance I can remember except for Martin Short as an irritating robot. Atlantis, on the other hand, has a host of character actors.
I got you 4 basic food groups: beans, bacon, whiskey, and lard.
Plus James Garner and Michael J. Fox. Jim Varney, Leonard Nimoy, and Father Guido Sarducci. Like Emperor's New Groove, it's a really bizarre list, but everybody is on their A-game.
We're all gonna die.
I don't even like Don Novella's comedy, but I adore his pyromaniac Vinny.
Gunpowder, nitroglycerin, notepads, fuses, wicks, glue, and paper clips, big ones. Just the office supplies.
So, when they get to that predictable ending and the team members decide to forsake the villain's mission and side with the Atlanteans, there is real emotional impact, because you've gotten to love these people throughout their journey.
Ah, 2 for flinching. See ya, Milo.
So, there's the turn of the century for you. A wild feature-length cartoon, a prestige film that will rip your heart out, and an ensemble comedy with phenomenal art design. It's weird, but it's not a bad little section of Disney history.